Welcome to Creative Imperfections, the podcast where perfection is overrated and messy magic gets the spotlight. I'm so glad you're here. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Creative Imperfections. So today I want to talk about something that I feel like is hitting all of us. You know that feeling when the year is almost over and your brain quietly whispers, it's basically done anyway. I'll just start fresh in January. Yeah, that one. That voice is sneaky. It sounds comforting. It sounds reasonable, but honestly, it's a thief. It steals your momentum. It steals your confidence, and it steals the version of you that could have crossed this year's finish line proud instead of checked out. Today, we're not doing cozy, fluffy holiday hustle talk. We're talking about not coasting. We're talking about what it really means to finish strong so you can start strong. Because the way you close this year is the way you're going to walk into the next one. There's this myth that January has magic powers. January me is somehow going to be more disciplined, more organized, more motivated, even though current me is ignoring everything I said I wanted. That's not how it works. January doesn't change you. New Year's Day doesn't come with a new personality download. If you're avoiding your dreams in December, you're probably going to avoid them in January too, just with a fancy new planner and a fresh set of excuses. Harsh, maybe, but it's honest. We love the fantasy of the clean slate because it lets us off the hook right now. We say things like, I'll get serious after the holidays. Everyone slows down this time of year. No one's really doing anything anyway. You know who actually believes that? The people who are coasting. People who are tired, yes. But instead of resting with intention, they numb out, they drift, they disconnect, and then they wonder why next year feels like a repeat of the last. You are not that person. You wouldn't even be listening to a podcast like this if you were. Let's redefine finishing strong, because your brain might already be hearing grind harder, sleep less, push, push, push. Nope, that's burnout cosplay. We're not doing that. Finishing strong is not about doing everything. It's about doing the right things on purpose. Finishing strong sounds more like, I'm going to be honest about what still matters this year and what doesn't. Or I'm going to keep one promise to myself each week. Or I'm not letting this year fade out with me hiding from my own goals. Sometimes finishing strong looks quiet from the outside. Sending that one email you've been avoiding. Cleaning up your workspace so January doesn't start in total chaos. Finishing a small project that proves to your nervous system, I follow through. It's less about volume and more about integrity. You said you wanted something this year. Finishing strong is you saying, I still care. I'm still in this. So let's talk holidays. The season comes with 1,000 obligations, a ton of pressure to be on all the time, and a giant cultural permission slip to say, whatever, I'll deal with it later. Look, resting is beautiful. Slowing down is absolutely necessary. I am a huge fan of joy, connection, food, naps, movies, ugly pajamas, all of it. But there's a big difference between resting and checking out. Rest says I'm taking care of me so I can keep going. Checking out says I'm pretending none of this matters so I don't have to feel disappointed. You can attend the party and still send the email. You can bake the cookies and still carve out 30 minutes to work on that thing that matters to you. You can love your people deeply without abandoning yourself. Holidays are not a mandatory I'll ghost my dreams until January zone. You are allowed to be the person at the end of the year who is both celebrating and quietly building the next version of their life. Let's zoom ahead for a second. Imagine it's January 2nd. You look back at the last 6 weeks of the year and you realize you stopped showing up for your creative work. You ignored your business. You let your routines completely fall apart. You wake up in the new year not at day one, but at I have to rebuild everything from scratch. That is not a fresh start. That is a recovery mission. Coasting has a cost. You lose momentum. You lose self-trust. You reinforce the story, I don't follow through. And the hardest part? Every time you tell yourself this time will be different and then you abandon that promise, you teach your brain not to believe you. Finishing strong isn't just about results. It's about repairing that trust. It's you saying, I'm not perfect. I didn't hit everything I wanted this year, but I won't ghost myself just because the calendar is running out. Now let's bring this all back down out of the clouds and into actual tangible life. Finishing strong might look like picking one creative project to touch every week until the year ends. Not 10, not 5, just one. Choosing one habit you refuse to drop. Maybe it's 10 minutes of practice or journaling or a daily walk so your brain doesn't melt. Making one brave move, reaching out to someone, pitching yourself, sharing your work, finally announcing that thing you've been sitting on. It could also look like closing loops, clean out your inbox, update your website or reels just enough so that you're not embarrassed by them in January. Writing down your ideas in one place so you're not starting the new year in chaos. Finishing strong is not you suddenly becoming a productivity robot. It's you saying, I'm not ghosting my life just because the year is almost over. Even one small, consistent action shifts you into a different identity. From someone who waits for the right time to someone who creates it. The real question is, who are you becoming while the year is ending? Not what are your goals for next year, not what's your word for next year. We love those, of course. I choose a word every year. But first, who are you walking into the next year as? The person who coasted, who numbed out, who quietly gave up on themselves for 6 weeks? Or the person who said, I'm tired, life is full, things are messy, but I'm not handing over the steering wheel of my life to the calendar. You don't need a perfect plan to become that person. You need a decision. A line in the sand. I will not abandon myself in the last stretch. Your future self doesn't need you to be flawless. They need you to keep caring. Let me say this plainly. You deserve more than a half-hearted ending. You deserve to look back at this year and say, I didn't give up on me, even when it would have been easier to coast. Not because you hustled yourself into exhaustion and not because you checked every box, but because you stayed in relationship with your dreams. If there's grief about what didn't happen this year, feel that. If there's frustration about plans that fell apart, honor that. But don't turn that disappointment into a reason to disappear. You are allowed to be both, proud of how far you've come and hungry for more. You are allowed to say, I didn't do everything I wanted to, but I'm still in the game. Finish this year as a participant in your life, not a spectator. So here's my invitation to you. Over these last weeks of the year, choose one way you're going to finish strong. Not 10, not a whole new routine, just one. One promise you'll keep to yourself. One action you will show up for again and again. One thing that reminds you you are someone who doesn't abandon your dreams no matter what the calendar says. Because when the clock hits midnight and a new year begins, you won't be starting from zero. You'll be carrying momentum. You'll be carrying self-trust. You'll be carrying proof that you are the kind of person who stays. And that is how you start strong. Not because January is magical, but because you are already in motion. Come on, this is Creative Imperfections. We don't wait to become a new person on a specific date. We choose, in the messy middle, to keep showing up as the truest version of ourselves. This year isn't over. You're not done. Finish strong so you can start strong. And remember, the magic isn't in the new year. The magic is in you right now. And always remember, there's magic in your imperfections. Go out there and find it. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of Creative Imperfections. If you have a friend who could use this advice right now, please feel free to share this with them and make sure you subscribe.